Useless. That was the last word my sister Blair spat before our parents, Dad, Frank, and Mom, Maureen, told me to leave their pristine, money-filled home forever. I thought that walking out with a trash bag full of my things was rock bottom. I was wrong. Rock bottom had bare feet, kind eyes, and a secret that would tear my whole world apart. I'm Romy. For 23 years, I'd been the disappointment. My offense. Choosing to be a public school art teacher instead of a lawyer like Blair. That Sunday dinner had started like any other. Polite chatter, expensive wine, polite laughter. But when Mom quietly asked me to convince Trey, my wealthy, dismissive boyfriend, to lend money for her elective surgery, I refused. I couldn't swallow my pride just to save face. That was the moment everything cracked. Dad slammed his fork down. "We're done funding your pathetic life," he said, voice flat. Blair sneered at me, arms folded, red wine trickling down her chin. "Get out, Romy." I froze. Then I grabbed my bag, a battered duffel I'd stuffed with clothes, a sketchbook, my favorite brushes. My heart pounded so loud I thought they'd hear it outside. Blair's smirk haunted me as I stepped out of their house. I walked aimlessly into the night. By morning I had exactly $127 in my bank account, no place to go, and I slept in my beat-up Corolla. I'd watched my life spiral slowly downward after that night. Humiliation, doubt, and a wound that wouldn't heal. I wondered many times if I'd ever pick myself back up. But little did I know rock bottom wasn't the wrecked car or the cold loneliness. It was the quiet knock on a door in a rain-soaked street, and the barefoot woman inside who'd change everything. Rain poured so hard that day it felt like the sky was punishing me. I was driving with no real destination, just trying to keep myself together after being thrown out. My old car shook with every mile, and soon the engine began making a rough, choking sound. Before I could pull over, it gave one last sputter and died completely. I sat there in the dark, in a neighborhood my family would have called trashy, with rain hitting the windshield like tiny stones. I felt small, cold, and painfully lost. I didn't know what else to do. I stepped out into the storm, my clothes soaking through instantly, and looked around for help. Most houses were dark, and I didn't want to bother anyone, but fear pushed me forward. I finally walked up to a small house with a warm light glowing inside. It wasn't fancy, just neat and cared for. My hands shook as I knocked, hoping someone kind lived behind the door. When it opened, I blinked in surprise. A woman around my age stood there, barefoot, paint smudged on her jeans and fingers. Her hair was tied back loosely, and she looked at me with a calm, open expression. Not shocked, not suspicious, just gentle. She didn't stare at my wet clothes or ask why I was standing there like a stray cat. She simply said, "Come inside. You're freezing." I could barely speak, but she didn't push. She handed me a towel and offered some dry clothes. They were simple pajamas, soft and warm, and I changed while trying not to cry from the kindness. When I came out, she had a bowl of hot soup waiting on the table. The smell of it, chicken, herbs, heat, made me realize how hungry I actually was. "My name's Jolene," she said with a small smile. I told her my name, and she nodded like she already understood I was carrying something heavy. She didn't ask why I was there or what had happened to me. She just let me sit, eat, and breathe. Her home was filled with paintings, bright colors, soft strokes, quiet stories. I felt drawn to them immediately. "You paint?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Not famous or anything. Just enough to get by." For the first time in days, I felt a piece of the tightness in my chest loosen. She told me I could stay on her couch for the night. I lay there listening to the rain outside and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Jolene didn't treat me like a burden or a disappointment. She didn't look down on me for being lost and broke. In her quiet way, she gave me something my own family never truly gave: kindness without a price. Living with Jolene slowly started to feel like breathing again after being underwater for too long. I didn't plan to stay with her for more than a few nights, but she never made me feel like I was overstaying. She simply said, "Stay until you figure things out," and she meant it. Her home was small, warm, and full of quiet comfort. Every morning she made simple breakfast, and every evening she asked how I was doing without expecting a perfect answer. She even helped me find a job at a nearby framing shop. It wasn't anything fancy, but it gave me a place to stand again. I liked working with my hands, fixing frames, choosing mats, and helping customers. It reminded me of the calm I used to feel when painting. Each day I walked back to her house a little lighter, a little more sure that maybe I wasn't as useless as my family claimed. One evening, after work, I offered to clean the living room while Jolene was busy finishing a painting in her small studio. She painted late into the night sometimes, humming softly under her breath like it kept her steady. I dusted the shelves, arranged the books, and moved to the small wooden mantel where she kept old photos and tiny souvenirs. When I picked up one of the frames to wipe it, my hand froze. The photograph inside was faded, almost yellow around the edges, but the faces were clear enough. Jolene was maybe 12 in the picture, smiling shyly. Beside her was a woman with soft eyes, gentle features, and a familiar shape to her smile. A smile I had seen in childhood photos at home. My stomach dropped. It couldn't be. But the longer I stared, the more the truth pushed its way into me. I whispered, barely breathing, "This is my aunt, Lydia." Jolene must have heard the tremble in my voice because she walked into the room. The moment her eyes landed on the photo in my hands, her expression changed. The color drained from her face, and she looked like the air had been knocked out of her. "You know her?" she asked quietly, as if afraid of the answer. "She was my father's sister," I said. "But we never talked about her. They said she passed away a long time ago." Jolene swallowed hard, looked down at her bare feet, and then finally met my eyes. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Lydia was my mother," she whispered. "But her family cast her out when she got pregnant with me. She refused to follow their rules. They never forgave her." The room felt suddenly still, as if the walls themselves were listening. My heart thudded painfully as the truth took shape. Jolene wasn't just a stranger who saved me. She was blood. And my family had abandoned her mother the same way they abandoned me. The moment Jolene told me that Lydia was her mother, my whole body felt numb. I stood there holding the photo, trying to make sense of something that didn't seem real. All my life, I had been told our family was close, respectful, full of values. But now, standing in Jolene's living room, I could feel that image cracking apart like thin glass. Slowly, everything fell into place. Jolene wasn't just a kind stranger who helped me. She was my cousin, my father's own niece. And he had never said a single word about her. Not once. I asked Jolene to sit with me, and she told me her story piece by piece, her voice soft and tired, like it was a wound she'd learned to live with. Her mother, Lydia, had gotten pregnant young. Instead of supporting her, instead of offering love or help, my grandparents and my father pushed her to give up the baby and marry a man they approved of. Lydia refused. She chose her child instead of their pride. And for that, they cut her off completely. They shut the door on her life and never looked back. Jolene said they moved from place to place when she was little, trying to survive. Lydia worked any job she could get, cleaning houses, painting signs, even sewing clothes for neighbors. There was no family to fall back on, no safety net. She was alone, and she paid the price for choosing love over reputation. Then came the part that made my throat tighten. Lydia had died young. A simple illness, something that could have been treated easily if she had money or support. But she didn't. Poverty stole what care might have saved her. Jolene was left to grow up on her own, doing her best to honor the mother who chose her. As she spoke, I felt a cold, sharp anger rise inside me. My parents had let their own flesh and blood suffer because she didn't fit their perfect image. They had preached loyalty, respect, and family, but they had thrown Lydia away like she was nothing. Just like they threw me away. I remembered every time Dad talked about protecting the family name. Every time Mom warned me not to act beneath our status. Every moment Blair smirked like she was above the world. It all felt rotten now. They had lied to me my whole life. Lied through their rules, their traditions, their speeches about pride. Behind all that polish was cruelty. A cruelty so deep it had taken a woman's life and nearly crushed Jolene's future. I looked at her, this quiet, gentle cousin who had taken me in without asking for anything. She had more heart than my entire family combined. And standing there, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just sadness or shock. It was the beginning of a rage so cold, so steady, that I knew it wouldn't fade. For the first time, I saw my family for who they truly were. And I knew I could never go back. After learning the truth about Jolene and Lydia, something inside me refused to stay silent. I didn't want to trouble Jolene with more pain, so I kept most of my thoughts to myself. She had already lived through enough. Instead, I decided to move quietly, step by step, without letting anyone know what I was doing. I began with something simple, paying attention. My parents had always acted flawless, always polished, always superior. But I grew up in that house. I knew where they hid their secrets. I knew how they handled money, how they treated people, how they twisted rules to get what they wanted. I had ignored those things before, trying to believe the best. But now I saw everything clearly. My father's real estate company was the first place I looked. I found old files on an old laptop I still had access to, files he thought I never cared about. Some documents didn't match. Some payments had no clear explanation. There were properties listed at one price publicly, but moved for different prices privately. It didn't take long to see that he had been doing shady deals for years. Not big enough to be obvious, but enough to show dishonesty. Enough to hurt him if the right people found out. Then I turned to Blair, my perfect sister who loved reminding everyone she was better than me. She bragged about law school like it was written in the stars for her. But I remembered late nights when she copied essays from online sites. I remembered her crying because she didn't understand a case, but somehow turning in a perfect paper the next day. So I checked. I searched her old assignments and compared them. Piece by piece, the truth appeared. She had plagiarized many papers. At first, I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered the way she called me useless. The way she watched Dad throw me out. The way she smiled while I broke. I gathered everything slowly, carefully. Screenshots. Matching documents. Copies of emails. Public records that didn't line up. I kept everything organized in a single folder. It became my quiet mission every night after work. The surprising thing was how natural it felt. My family always said art was a waste of time, that it taught me nothing useful. But it was my artist's eye, the ability to notice small details, that helped me see the patterns they tried to hide. It was my patience, the same patience I used when teaching kids to paint, that helped me sit for hours digging through information. I didn't want a loud fight. I didn't want to scream or argue or beg them to understand. I knew they would never listen. Revenge, for me, wasn't about hurting them physically or shouting at them. It was about letting the truth come out on its own, like light slowly revealing what had been in the shadows all along. They had built their lives on lies. I was simply preparing to let those lies collapse. Quietly, carefully, completely. The chance to bring everything to light came faster than I expected. My father's company was sponsoring a large charity gala, the kind of event where people dressed in expensive clothes and pretended to care about good causes while showing off their wealth. Normally, I would have stayed far away, but I knew this was the perfect place to reveal the truth. Jolene wasn't sure at first. She didn't want more pain or drama, and I understood that. But when I told her I wasn't doing this for revenge alone, but also for Lydia, she nodded slowly. She gave me her quiet blessing, even though I could see worry in her eyes. Having her support meant more to me than anything. A former colleague of my father's, a man who had worked with him years ago, reached out to me after hearing bits of what happened to Lydia. He had left the company because of my father's behavior and was more than willing to help. With his influence, he managed to get my name on the guest list. It felt strange, knowing I was walking into the same world that had rejected both me and Jolene's mother. But I wasn't walking in defeated this time. I was walking in prepared. I couldn't show up looking broken. I borrowed a simple but sharp suit from a friend at the framing shop. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I hardly recognized the woman staring back. I didn't look like the girl my family threw out. I looked like someone confident, steady, and ready to fight with truth instead of fear. When I stepped into the ballroom, everything sparkled: chandeliers, long tables, polished silver, and soft music. People laughed and chatted, pretending their lives were perfect. My parents stood near the center, talking proudly with other donors. Blair was beside them, wearing a bright dress and her usual smug smile. The moment they saw me, their faces froze. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's eyes widened. Blair's smile dropped completely. They looked confused, annoyed, and almost panicked, as if I had brought dirt into their polished world simply by showing up. Seeing their shock gave me a calm strength I hadn't felt in years. I knew they'd try to stop me if they could, so I moved before they had the chance. When the host announced the donor recognition speech, I stepped up to the stage as if I belonged there. The microphone felt cold in my hand, but my voice was steady. People looked up from their plates, surprised. I didn't wait for permission. I looked out at the crowd, a room full of powerful people who believed my father was a good man, and spoke clearly. I didn't shout or raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence in the room made every word louder. Before my family could reach the stage, before they could drag me away, I had already begun revealing the truth that would break the perfect image they had protected for so long. I took a deep breath, held the microphone, and looked around the crowded ballroom. Thank you for having me, I said clearly. My name is Romy Finch. Frank Finch is my father. Most of you know him as a respected man in the community. I held up the faded photo of Lydia and Jolene for everyone to see. The room went quiet, all eyes suddenly on me. But do you know about Lydia Finch? I continued, my voice calm. His sister, who he abandoned when she needed her family the most. Or Jolene, his niece, who grew up in poverty while he built this life of wealth and influence. I let the words sink in. Some people looked shocked, others confused. My parents shifted uncomfortably, trying to hide their faces, but it was too late. I started laying out the facts I had spent months collecting. I spoke about my father's shady deals, the off-the-book property transactions, and how he used people to protect his image. I didn't exaggerate or yell. I only said what I could prove. Then I turned to Blair. And the brilliant lawyer daughter everyone admires? Her career is built on work that isn't hers. She stole it. She lied to achieve what she has. The silence in the room was heavy. No one whispered. No one moved. Every person listening could feel the weight of what I was saying. I didn't need to scream or cry to make them understand. The truth itself was powerful enough. Every carefully hidden secret, every lie, every act of cruelty my parents had buried was now in the open. I kept my voice steady, my eyes focused. I watched the reaction on their faces. Shock, anger, fear. They had never imagined that their perfect image could be shattered in minutes, and now it was happening in front of the entire community. People who had praised my father were whispering, some pulling out phones, some staring in disbelief. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, and Blair's face had turned pale. My father looked frozen, like he had seen a ghost. For years, they had used power and status to control how people saw them. But here in this room, I was holding the truth like a weapon, not loud, not angry, just clear, undeniable. Every fact, every piece of evidence, hit harder than any yell could have. By the time I stepped down from the stage, the ballroom felt different. Their world, the one they had built with lies and pride, was crumbling. I could feel it. And in that quiet, steady moment, I understood something important. The truth doesn't need to shout. It simply needs to be told. After the gala, everything changed fast. My father's business partners started asking questions immediately. They went through the company's records and found the same problems I had exposed. Deals that were supposed to be transparent didn't match the paperwork. Some partners were angry, some shocked, but all realized the truth was undeniable. They had to act, and soon. Blair faced consequences too. Her law firm began a full review of her work. Some of her cases were suspended while they checked if she had truly stolen or copied others' work. She had built a career on lies, and now every achievement she had claimed was being questioned. I didn't feel pleasure in seeing her embarrassed, but I felt a sense of justice. The social fallout hit hard as well. Friends, neighbors, and community members who once praised my family now whispered and avoided them. Invitations stopped coming, and casual smiles turned into awkward glances. Their reputation, the one they had worked decades to polish, crumbled in a matter of days. As for my parents, they tried to reach me. Phone calls, texts, even emails. They yelled and threatened, but I didn't answer. I blocked every number and ignored every message. They wanted to control the narrative, to intimidate me into silence, but this time, I didn't care about their anger or their pride. Their image was already shattered, and there was nothing they could do to fix it. While their world was collapsing, I focused on what really mattered, Jolene. She had been through so much because of my family's cruelty, and now I could help her in a way that actually mattered. I used the evidence I had gathered and worked through legal channels to ensure she received a quiet, substantial financial settlement from my father's assets. It wasn't everything, and it couldn't bring back her mother, but it was a start. It gave her stability, recognition, and a sense of justice that she had never had before. The quietness of it all surprised me. Nothing flashy, no celebrations, no grand announcements. Just the steady knowledge that I had corrected, at least in part, the wrongs my family had caused. My anger and hurt were slowly replaced by a sense of calm and focus. I realized that revenge didn't need to be loud. Sometimes the most powerful victories were silent, strategic, and meaningful. In the end, my parents' empire of lies had fallen, Blair's false success was exposed, and Jolene finally had security and recognition. The balance of justice had shifted, not with shouting or violence, but with truth, patience, and careful planning. I could finally breathe again, knowing that at least some of the damage had been repaired, and that I had reclaimed my life from the people who had tried to break me. After Jolene received the settlement, we decided to do something meaningful with it. We opened a small community arts center in the neighborhood where I had felt lost and broken. We named it the Lydia Studio, in memory of her mother and everything she had sacrificed. The idea was simple, a place where anyone could come, learn, and create, no matter their background or how much money they had. From the very first day, the studio felt alive. Children from the neighborhood came in with curiosity and excitement. Some had never held a paintbrush before. Others had small talents waiting to be noticed. Jolene and I taught them how to express themselves, how to turn blank paper into stories and empty walls into colors. Watching them learn and grow reminded me of the joy I had felt as a young artist before my family's cruelty had taken it away. It wasn't just about the kids, though. We invited neighbors, friends, and even some adults to join classes. People came to paint, to craft, to learn, and in return, they brought life into the studio. The warmth of the place grew quickly. Every smile, every shared laugh, every small success of the students felt like a piece of healing for both Jolene and me. I realized that the family I had always wanted didn't have to be the one I was born into. The people who showed care, support, and kindness became my family. Jolene was there every day, her quiet strength guiding me. The friends I had met through work helped with supplies and volunteering. Even some of the kids' parents joined in, offering help and encouragement. Together, we created more than just an art center. We built a community, a family that was chosen, not forced. The studio became a safe place, a home of sorts, where everyone felt welcome. We didn't care about status, money, or appearances. Everything was based on compassion, respect, and the simple love for art and creativity. I found a deep satisfaction in seeing children grow in confidence, in watching Jolene laugh freely, and in knowing that our efforts were changing lives bit by bit. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. I had built a family that was real and strong, a life rooted in kindness rather than judgment. The Lydia Studio wasn't just a place to paint. It was a symbol of everything we had lost and everything we had found again. In the end, I realized that true family isn't about blood or wealth. It's about love, support, and being there for each other, no matter what. A year had passed since the gala, and life at the studio had settled into a happy rhythm. One afternoon, I noticed my mother standing at the door. She looked tired and worn, carrying the weight of years I had never seen before. She came alone, no father, no sister, no entourage. I didn't know what to expect, but I sensed she wasn't there to argue or yell. She took a deep breath, and her hands shook slightly. "Romy," she said quietly, "I've lived in fear for so long, afraid of your father's anger, afraid of what people would think. I'm sorry. Not for me, but for Lydia. For what happened to her and Jolene." I studied her face. The pride and sharpness I had known all my life were gone. There was no anger, no smirk, no judgment. Just a woman who had finally carried the truth inside her too long and needed to say it out loud. I listened, letting her words settle. It wasn't forgiveness she sought from me, and I didn't need it. It was closure, for her, for Lydia, for the years lost. I nodded slowly. "I hope you find peace, Mom," I said. "I really do. But my life is here, with Jolene, with the people who choose to be my family every day." She gave a small, sad smile, and without another word, she turned and left. I watched her walk away, feeling the last of the tension with my past loosen, just a little. I turned back into the studio, and the sight filled me with warmth. Jolene was laughing with a group of kids, barefoot as always, her paint-stained hands moving quickly as she guided them through a new art project. The room was bright, colorful, alive with creativity and joy. I felt a quiet pride wash over me. The useless daughter, the one my family had scorned, had built something real, something lasting, something full of love. Everything I had done, the careful planning, the truth exposed, the quiet justice, led to this moment. The revenge was complete, but it wasn't the victory that mattered most. What mattered was the life I had built, the family I had chosen, and the peace I had finally found. I stepped closer to Jolene, watching the children's smiles, listening to their laughter, and felt a deep sense of calm. No wealth, no approval from my old family, no titles could compare to this. This was mine, a life made from truth, care, and resilience. For the first time, I understood that the real triumph wasn't punishment. It was creating something beautiful from the pain and living fully in it, with people who truly mattered. I smiled, feeling complete, knowing that the worst of the past had given way to the best of my present. Do you think I was right to leave my family behind and build my own life? or should I have given them another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe with the bell for more stories like mine.